Welcome to Synthetic Oil Protection. I'm your host Eben, and today we're going over transmission fluid types and the two important components to keep your transmission lasting long. All right, so now we're in the shop, and well, we got our regular ATF. And what is the regular ATF usually used for, Stephen?
And that's what you'd find in probably about 90% of your standard automatic transmission vehicles, anything from a Ford pickup truck down to a Toyota Corolla. For the most part, it's a very wide array. Now, there are different companies that have their specifications, but this AMSOIL covers just about everything short of the specialty fluids, which we have over here behind us.
If you're new to my channel, definitely consider subscribing. You can tap the little red icon in the corner. That way you can come back and watch this important information for your vehicle later. What are some of the important things to make a transmission last longer, like a regular ATF?
Well, most important is service it. Just like your engine, you got to service it. You got to change the fluid in the filter. Most dealerships and owners' manuals don't really make it well known, and so most people don't think about it until they start to have a problem. And that's 99% of the time too late. The way ATF behaves, it's very high in detergent. All it wants to do is clean, 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 and attack any contaminants. So when these vehicles get to that point where they start to have a funky shift or slip a little bit, changing that fluid could actually cause the transmission to just stop outright altogether.
And how often, most of the time, should most regular ATFs be changed?
We recommend, as far as any transmission, sort of manuals, servicing every 30,000 miles. No more than 40, but 30,000 miles for your average daily driver, non-severe conditions. Now, if you're beating up on your car, like if it's more of a track car, or you drive with a heavy foot, you can do it as early as 10,000 miles. I mean, you can do it every 1,000 miles if you wanted to. It won't hurt anything to service it too much, other than your pocketbook.
Now, the second component that's really important, after you do the fluid service, there's another thing that gets changed out.
You always want to change the filter.
Right.
Just like your engine oil, you don't change your engine oil and not the filter. The filter keeps all of those contaminants at bay from recirculating through the unit and causing damage. So you want to get rid of that old nasty filter and put a fresh one in there. If the filter gets too plugged up, it can cause fluid pressure losses.
Yeah.
If a transmission loses fluid pressure, it'll start to slip, burn the clutches, and now we're back at the problem of, now my car don't move. What happened?
All right, now we're on to another ATF fluid, and this is called fuel efficient. So what's the new thinner viscosity usually for?
Believe it or not, most of the newer vehicles, sort of heavy duty, are using these fuel efficient style transmission fluids. My 2018 Toyota calls for, Toyota Tacoma calls for the fuel efficient ATF, which surprised me. Being it's a truck, it's a four-wheel drive, it's a rough and tough vehicle. I would expect more of a standard heavy-duty ATF. But everything from hybrids to normal vehicles, and again, even pickups nowadays are using the thinner viscosity, and it just promotes better fuel mileage.
Now we're on to some thicker stuff, and tell us a little bit about what this is usually used in.
Manual transmission and transaxles. It pretty much says it right there on the package. Anything from your old muscle cars, they use more of a heavy gear oil. All the Volkswagen transmissions, I only know that because I have one myself. And that's about it. More of the modern manual transmissions will even use straight synthetic ATF, just like your standard automatic transmissions. And then there are a couple other vehicles that use a synchro mesh transmission fluid. It's a specialty blend.
On most manual transmissions and transaxles, like a Porsche transaxle, it's the transmission and the differential all in one. How often would you usually change something like that?
Again, it's going to boil down to your use and your driving habits. Personally, like on my old Volkswagen, I changed the fluid maybe every 5,000 miles. It's an older transmission. I beat the crap out of it, and being that it lubricates not only the differential, but the transmission as well. So fresh fluid again, never going to hurt it.
So usually what, like 30, 20, 30?
As far as, yeah, your standard vehicle, I'd say 30,000 miles. That's a good, safe number. It's not too early, but it's not too late.
All right, now we're on the dual clutch. This is 100% synthetic. And what usual cars are taking this now?
Well, a lot of the dual clutches out there on the road today are, believe it or not, your lower end Ford vehicles.
Wow.
You also have your Volkswagen and Audis that have the DSG transmissions.
Yep.
And those are a wet clutch dual clutch, whereas the Fords are a dry clutch. In fact, I have a clutch over here. Let me grab it and I'll show you guys. This heavy little sucker here is a dual clutch unit out of a Ford Fiesta. Inside, there is 2 separate pressure plate and clutch discs, and each of them are splined individually to 2 separate transmission input shafts. Ford knows that this is a major problem. These Fiestas like to chatter as the clutches wear, and that is due to a seal failure. Once the seal fails and the clutches get wet, just like your standard manual clutch, oil gets on it, it's going to slip. So we're starting to see a whole bunch of these now that they're falling out of warranty.
What can they do to prevent that from happening? Is there anything they can do?
There are a few updates and TSBs out there from the dealer that address shifting patterns and the way they engage, but just like a manual transmission, this is a wear component. It will wear out, it will need to be replaced, just like your manual transmission. It's not like your standard automatic where you can go, with proper service, to 300,000+ miles. So they're great on more high-performance vehicles, in my opinion.
Yep.
Like the McLarens, the Bugattis,
Mercedes, Porsche, BMW, and even Ferrari. There's even a Ferrari specification, Shell Ferrari, right here.
I think those are better suited for those kind of vehicles where you're going to go out and have fun with them, not so much a daily driver, just because it is a wear component, and I see them in here as early as 60,000 miles, if not sooner. Wow. That's not very good not very good life for a clutch.
Wow. Steven, question, which of all these is the most delicate and should we really keep your eye on, would you say?
I would say the CVTs.
All right, the CVT.
CVTs are a great concept, they're a great design, but unfortunately with how heavy vehicles are, the execution was quite poor. Not to name anybody, Nissan. They're essentially a belt drive unit. Those of you that are familiar with like ATVs and snowmobiles, they have a rubber belt drive. You mash the throttle and the engine stays at its constant RPM, and there's these 2 pulleys that the belt rides on that changes diameters. That's your gear change, if you will. Depending on your vehicle load, throttle input, that's how they shift. Now, the Nissan CVTs in particular are very subjective to heat. I think the major killing factor in them is the stop and go. That steel belt, and I wish I had one here to show you, but I don't, unfortunately. The steel belt is made up of something like 400 individual segments with a bunch of steel bands that run along the outside.
Wow. So
think of a bicycle chain or a motorcycle chain, except those links are about the thickness of a quarter, maybe a 50-cent piece. And they're stacked up in a loop, about 400 in count. That belt takes all the wear and tear of the vehicle trying to take off. That has to transfer the power from the crankshaft down to the wheels. And they just can't handle it. Now, Toyota came out just in the last year or so with a new design of CVT that I'm actually quite excited to see how well they last.
Wow. They
actually have a first gear, like a standard automatic transmission. So from a stop, you have a planetary gear drive, similar to something like this. to take all the load of that heavy car and get it moving. Once the vehicle starts moving, now the belt drive takes over. It doesn't have that stress and wear of trying to get the car moving. Now that it's rolling, you're already at your cruising speed and everything's more efficient. That's where that CVT should excel over the Nissans, the Dodges, Fiats, really just about all of them. Time will tell, but I'm quite excited about it to see how well they hold up.
So the most important thing on the transmissions is to make sure you know which one your car takes. So definitely check that out. I have a link in the description that goes to a link. It says AMSOIL Lookup, and you can actually look up what your car takes and the capacity in there. Also, the next most important thing is how and when you change it. So, you know, the owner's manual usually says an interval, and that's probably a little further than you should. You could probably do it a little earlier.
Most manuals I've seen, I'd say the earliest would be 60,000 miles. That's twice as far as I would recommend going. Some of them, like BMWs, Mercedes, claim that the fluid is a lifetime fluid. Newsflash, that's a lie. No fluid is a lifetime fluid. It wears, it breaks down. Change it. You want that expensive BMW transmission to last? Change the fluid. It'll thank you later. Personally, I get customers call me all the time that ask to flush a transmission. I don't like flushing transmissions. Most places that I've seen that do it, one, they don't change the filter. They're hooking up a machine and sucking the fluid out and pumping new fluid in. Two, depending on the condition of your transmission, if there's any deposits in there, forcing hydraulic fluid through another hydraulic fluid, which is what most automatic transmissions are, can dislodge deposits, cause them to move elsewhere and get stuck, like in a solenoid, a valve in the valve body, and cause problems. I've had quite a few customers come in, oh, my car don't move, can you guys tell me what's wrong? And we always ask, when's the last time they serviced it? Oh, well, I had it flushed a week ago. Be surprised how many I see that does happen.
One thing that makes this a little bit different than the other fluids, it's 100% synthetic, and you can do double the severe service of OEM. So if you're towing, stuff like that, the fluid actually oxidizes exponentially, and for every 18 degrees hotter your transmission runs, the fluid breaks down twice as fast.
Heat is the biggest killer of transmissions. Almost every large truck that we have coming here, we always put on external coolers, especially if they're towing. In fact, I'm about to put one on my brand new Toyota just for safety's sake.
Yeah, 100% synthetic actually circulates with less peristaltic drag and resistance, and it actually has less friction, and that'll keep your fluid temperatures lower, and then also the film strength is stronger, and that's what keeps the metal separated. So when these gears come together, they come together, and the only thing between is the film strength. And if you can have 100% synthetic film strength, it just keeps your heat down.
Not to mention, even though this particular fluid isn't the fuel efficient, 100% synthetic will also increase your fuel economy. Less drag, your transmission doesn't, or the engine doesn't have to work as hard to turn the transmission, I should say, which means you're going to get better fuel economy. Now, in some cases, it might be minimal. You might see a mile per gallon increase, or even more in some cases. It just depends on the vehicle and your driving habits.
Do you enjoy this video? If you did, definitely give it a thumbs up. That helps out my channel. Also, if you're new to the channel, you can tap the little red icon in the corner, and then you'll be able to come back and watch these videos later. All right, that pretty much sums up the video. I really appreciate you, Steven, for doing this for my channel. And also check out, so we're gonna be doing Steven's video on his Tacoma, which we did his motor oil. We did an oil analysis video, comprehensive, full circle, the oil change, the flush, everything on his truck. And that'll be right here in the little icon in the corner. And then also I have transmission fluid changes on all different types of vehicles, and those are in this icon right here in the corner as well. And well, anything else, Steve?
Thank you for coming by. It's always a pleasure. I like explaining how things work.
Sweet.
Don't get me wrong, I like when transmissions come in and broken because they make us a lot of money, but I want to help people as well and prolong the life of their vehicle the best they can. The best thing you can do, maintenance, maintenance, maintenance. Even if you don't do it yourself, if you got to pay somebody, have it maintenance. And here at AMCO, I'm about to the point where I'm going to start offering AMSOIL products to my customers as well if they'd like to purchase them. They are going to be a little bit more expensive than your standard ATF services, but I use them in my truck. I absolutely love them. Just in the engine oil alone, I saw a mile per gallon average increase. And here in the next couple days, I'm going to do my differentials, transmission, and the engine oil again. So I'm excited to see what the future holds for that.
All right, so be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you back when we do his truck. All right.
See y'all later.